Hello girls, thank you for joining me for my masterclass 101, Journalism, the Purpose of Journalism. I have not always wanted to be a journalist. I didn't even know I wanted to be a journalist. My first ambition was to be like my mother, to be a mother. That didn't happen. I think the second thing I wanted to do was be an Egyptologist, and my dad said that I would be alone, broke, and have no recognition, global or otherwise, of my work, and that I'd probably be buried under some museum somewhere. So that didn't happen. And then I fell in love with the heavens above and the stars, and I wanted to be an astronaut. And when I got to high school or secondary school and realized that I had no capacity for maths, physics, or chemistry, that dream was dead too. But my dad did say that I've always written notes. As soon as I could read and write, I stopped talking and I wrote notes. I still write notes and I still hand people notes, and I talk a whole lot more than I think I've ever done. So in many ways, journalism found me. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Nadine Drummond and I am a journalist. And I prepared some slides earlier to help me explain to you what journalism is, the purpose of journalism, and also talk a lot more about me and my passion. So let's go ahead to this slide. And oh, look, there it is. This is something I prepared earlier. So today our talk is going to be what I think journalism is at its core, and it's that we are, anybody who has the privilege of being a journalist are guardians of any democracy that we live in. Ta-da! So we're just going to click ahead so you can see, oh, sorry, technical error there, girls. Okay. Oh, there I am. Ta-da! When I used to work for CNN, I didn't study journalism. So questions lots of people ask is, do you need to study journalism? Actually, no, you don't need to study journalism. My first degree is in law. I read law at Cambridge. Then I won an academic scholarship and I went to the University of Miami, where I studied communications. I did a master's in communications with a major in broadcast journalism. And then my work took me everywhere. I stayed in Miami for a number of years covering local politics. And Miami is in Florida, which is a swing state. And if you know anything about American politics, you'll know that swing states determine who gets to be president of the United States. And so my knowledge made me very sought after in the 2008 election, which was the election of Barack Obama. So then I catapulted to CNN, in part because of my knowledge of Florida politics, but also because I was an immigrant, and I was an immigrant who had the eye to look for good stories and good leads, being an outsider and an insider in the American political and social life at the same time. And so with that opportunity, I got to go to Washington, DC and cover the inauguration of Barack Obama, which was fantastic. And I was at CNN for about 3 years, and then the Arab Spring happened, and I wanted to be in the midst of that very precious time in history. And so I found my way to Al Jazeera, where I stayed for 4 years, had a tremendous time, and then I quit, started my own production company, and I moved to Ethiopia, where I made my first film, my first documentary about a disenfranchised group of people there. And whilst there, I started doing other kinds of work as well, which led to my involvement working for and with international NGOs, which you would know as international charities like Oxfam or Save the Children, to help them tell the stories of the work that they were doing in all parts of the world. So in order for me to have been able to have such an independent but also international career, I had to be quite skilled. So that wasn't just in terms of my writing or my ability to talk, which I'm very good at. It was also because, as you can see from these pictures here, that I learned how to shoot, which is used for a camera. I learned how to do professional sound. as well as writing, and also a little bit of editing. And because I could put all of these things together, it made my professional life in many ways easier and opened me up to more opportunities. So a question that you may be asking is, oh, why journalism? What's so great about journalism? In fact, what is journalism? Well, here we go. Journalism is the collection, the preparation and distribution of news and related commentary and feature materials through things such as print and electronic media like newspapers, magazines, books, blogs, webcasts, podcasts, social networking and social media sites, and email, as well as through radio, motion pictures and television. So what I'd also add here is that journalism is all of these things, and the platforms exist for the stories that we tell, but the key, the thread that weaves all of this together is actually storytelling. You have to be a good storyteller in order for the audience to care or even pay attention to what it is that you're saying most of the time. So these are really important things to keep in mind. Now, the purpose of journalism, here we go. Sorry, girls. Okay, oh, there we go. Now, the purpose of journalism is debatable because I don't think there's only one purpose. I think you have like a hierarchy of purposes or a hierarchy of needs within journalism. And I think that Ida B. Wells, this is this lady here, her definition of journalism, I think still holds true today, which is that the purpose of journalism is to provide citizens with the information they need to make the best possible decisions about their lives, their communities, their societies, and their governments. Now, Ida B. Wells was a journalist and activist at the turn of the 20th century, and she was posthumously awarded the Pulitzer Prize for Journalism last week for the work that she did on the lynchings of African Americans. And I'm also an activist journalist, even though my issues are entwined with equal rights and justice. But I think that what is also equal to the purpose that Ida B. Wells has described here is that we need, as journalists, to also understand that we are guardians of our democracies and that we are watchdogs and that we should be loyal to protecting the interests of the public. And I think that's another key feature and purpose of journalism that isn't always discussed. But we're discussing it here now. Okay. Journalists also have responsibilities, and our responsibilities are to you, to the public, our audience. And I think that the reason this is so important is that it's a privilege for us to serve and to provide news for our public, but I think it's really important for the public to understand what we owe them so they can make clear judgments about whether or not we're doing a good job or a bad job, instead of the dichotomy that exists at the moment, which is good news or fake news or bad news or fake news. And it's even confusing for me. So my responsibility to you as a journalist is to be an informant, okay? So that means I inform you of changing events and changing issues in your local communities, in your towns, in your region, in your country, and in the world. That's my job. So what I've done is I've put together a few clips so that you can see what's really going on. So you can see us doing our jobs and the different ways in which we do our jobs. So we're going to look at informant first. So we're just going to take it full screen. Can we take it full screen? Oh, okay. Let's go. No, oh dear. Girls, this is
It was on Monday, the 23rd of March, nearly 7 weeks ago, that Boris Johnson first announced a lockdown and urged us all to stay at home and save lives. At that stage, 336 people in this country had died in hospital because of COVID-19. The reproduction, or R rate, at the start of the epidemic was 3. So for every 1 person infected, 3 more were infected, and then 3 more infected after them, and so on. As lockdown came into force, the R rate fell to around 0.6. But because the virus was already exponentially growing, the number of deaths continued to rise. On the 21st of April, 1,172 deaths were recorded in a single day. But as the R rate fell in time, so too did the daily numbers of deaths. Today, 269 deaths were recorded. The R rate is now thought to stand somewhere between 0.5 and 0.9. In the community, the outbreak is shrinking fast. But in hospitals,
okay, girls, I'm trying to stop this slide.
Which is why that reproduction rate might have...
Okay, I guess we just went forward on the slide. Apologies for that. It's very tricky. So just to recap, in terms of responsibilities that we owe our public as journalists, the other is to be a witness. We are supposed to bear witness and tell you, our audience, our local, global communities, about what's happening in the world. And you have journalists who risk their lives covering wars in all kinds of places to tell you what's happening. And I'm guilty. If that was a charge, I would be guilty, because I spent over a year in Yemen and I bore witness to some of the atrocities that were happening there. And this is a video or a short story that I did that went viral. It's not my only viral video, but it's definitely the first. And you'll see here that we use different techniques in order to tell the story. So take a look. Girls. Okay, bravo. Okay, I'm getting a hang of it. Thank you for your patience. So we'll recap. It's our job to be an informant. It's also our job to bear witness. And one of the really important things I did speak about earlier is to be a defender. So when we are defenders, it means that we protect our democracies, and journalists are the lifeblood of any democracy. You can test the freedom within any society that you're in if you have a free press. And that's one of the things that I think all of us in democracies that want our democracies to thrive should be really fighting for. And in the United Kingdom, the most effective, or the best example that I could find over the last 10 years really of effective watchdog journalism was from Amelia Gentleman. Now, she's a fantastic reporter at The Guardian who recently won the Paul Foot Award for her work on the Windrush scandal. So I hope that you're aware of the scandal, which is where people mainly from Caribbean descent, from the Windrush, that came to the UK to rebuild Britain after the First World War. Those children, and often grandchildren from that voyage from the Caribbean to Britain, were told that they were in the UK legally and were summarily deported. And many lost their lives, many lost years of income, houses, pensions, everything after they'd given their lives to Britain. And Amelia Gentleman actually campaigned on the issue through The Guardian for 6 months before it was picked up by any kind of media. But what was amazing about her story, or her reporting in terms of being a journalist, is that she was able to bring the government to heel, and the then Home Secretary, Amber Rudd, resigned. So this is a video I have here about this. Let's take a look.
Country and the West.
British Prime Minister Theresa May has apologised to leaders of Caribbean nations for anxiety caused to UK residents denied basic rights after being falsely identified as illegal immigrants. Thousands from the so-called Windrush generation have fallen victim to recent attempts to tighten immigration laws.
I am today announcing a new dedicated team that will be set up to help these people evidence their right to be in this country and access services. The team will be tasked with helping these applicants demonstrate they're entitled to live in the UK, and will be tasked with resolving cases within 2 weeks of the evidence being provided.
But news that some may have been mistakenly deported has sparked anger.
Can she tell the House how many have been denied health under the National Health Service? How many have denied pensions? How many have lost their job? This is a day of national shame, and it has come about because of a hostile environment policy that was begun under her Prime Minister. Let us call it as it is.
Almost 500,000 people left their homes in the West Indies to live in Britain between 1948 and 1970, when Commonwealth citizens were invited to fill labour shortages after World War II.
Girls, I'm struggling. Oh, we got it. Okay, so the next responsibility that we have of journalists, in addition to being a witness, being an informant, and defending our democracies, is context. Now, this isn't something that's often spoken about. So we have to make it make sense. That's just the easiest way to explain it. So if you think about context as a bridge, so we have the raw facts from a story that we've collected and we've verified and we've made sure are unbiased, they're objective. We then need to be the bridge to explain to you why that's relevant. So it may be explaining, it could operate as us explaining in the Brexit issue, who were the politicians that were pro-Brexit, who were the politicians that were against Brexit, and what this means to your pension, what this means to your milk delivery, what this means to the quality of the cheese, or whether or not you'll have New Zealand ham, so not ham, lamb. Okay, something else we can use as context is to explain perhaps why Mount Temple causes so much anguish for Muslim people, for Jewish people, or for Christian people. But in this example, I've decided to use something that I think is slightly more relevant in terms of environmentalism and where we are now, and looking at how the burning of the Amazon forest, where it was burning for weeks and weeks and weeks, months and months and months, affects us even though it's the other side of the world. So this is another example of context and something that journalists do, and we have a responsibility to do that isn't often spoken about. Okay, take a look.
In fact, there's an 80% increase in fires just over the last year alone. And this comes, of course, after the hottest July our planet has ever seen. I want you to take a look at these pictures showing the smoke from space. These are images from high above covering huge parts of South America. Now, this isn't an act of God. It's farmers and ranchers intentionally destroying the land for more development. The Amazon basin is, of course, known as the lungs of the world. It provides 20% of the oxygen for the entire planet.
Our global rainforests are essentially the planet's lungs. They breathe in CO2 and exhale oxygen. An acre of rainforest is cleared every second, and the leading cause is to graze animals and grow their feed crops. That is essentially an entire football field cleared every single second. And it is estimated that every day, close to 100 plant, animal, and insect species are lost due to rainforest destruction.
Okay, we got it again. All right. So out of all of these functions, what is journalism, the purpose and the responsibilities that we have to our audience, to the public, you guys? The thing that rings true and allows me to hold myself to a very high standard is that we are guardians of democracy. Without journalists to shine a light, there would be no accountability. Journalists are the defenders of democracies against the excesses of government power. Now, you know that we have different types of journalism, and journalism in many different forms is used to hold government to account. Now, you have what we know as broadcast journalism, and I'm a broadcast journalist. And the reason I've chosen a picture of a broadcasting room is most people, when they think about journalism, they think about the presenter or the reporter at the apex. Imagine it to be a mountain. If you think the apex of the mountain, there's an army of people underneath that has worked for hours, days, weeks, hours, minutes in order to, for that anchor or for that reporter to be able to say what it is that they're saying. And so this picture is also a shout out to everybody behind the scenes that actually makes broadcasting possible. We also have digital journalism, which I think you guys are more you engage with more. So that's anything electronic, that's anything on your phone, your tablet, anything. Even your Apple Watch tells you what the news is. And so digital journalism is, some would argue, the way forward. But I don't know, we'll see. Okay. Oh, come on, girls, I'm so sorry. Okay, print. So you know that we have newspapers, right? Yes, of course you know we have newspapers. And we have two different types in the UK, broadly speaking. We have broadsheets, which are newspapers like The Times, The Telegraph, The Guardian, and then we have daily rags, which you could say are The Star, The Mirror, The Sun, The Daily Mail, those sorts of newspapers. And we also have photojournalism. Now, the power of photojournalism is that they say a picture can tell 1,000 words, which is true in many instances, but you find that in today's trend that you need sound, audio, video, pictures, and words in order to tell a story. Gone are the days when you can just print with no pictures, and gone are the days when you can just have a TV broadcast and not have an online story to go with it. Everything is connected, it's interlinked. And even though you can be a master of one thing, you have to kind of know how it all fits with everything else. We have activist journalism. Now, I called myself an activist journalist earlier because I am. Now, some journalists would say, oh, no, you can't be an activist. You're either an activist or a journalist. And I don't think that's actually true, because any journalist that's ever been involved in equal rights and justice is a campaigning journalist. So the example I used of Amelia Gentleman and her work with the Windrush scandal, or the Windrush betrayal, which is what she calls it in her book. Anybody that says that she's not a real journalist, I would hold to account, because I think that she is. Just because she's an activist does not make her a journalist. In the same way, this is a dog here that's been quite severely abused. And if you are an animal rights activist and you are also a journalist, it doesn't mean you can't be two things. But, you know, I'm sure you'll decide. And the key about living in a democracy is you do get to decide. We also have investigative journalism, which is also the lifeblood of all democracies. You know how robust your press is based on how strong your investigations are. And investigations are really important because they uncover the truth of things. Anything that's hidden, and a good investigation can bring it to light. And that is really the core of journalism, that we uncover truths and we tell the ugly truth. And often we are prevented in countries from doing so, particularly those countries that don't have a free press. Now what? Ta-da! It's really up to you how you go forward. I would say that if you have an interest in journalism, just explore. You can explore, and you can do that by seeing if you can check off these 5 things. So I've made a little list which essentially shows you, let's bring it full screen, hold on a second, right? That essentially shows you 8 traits or 8 skills that good journalists have. So you have to be passionate, you have to be driven by something, you have to have skills of critical analysis, empathy, you have to be confident, adaptable. You could be writing a story on the weather, the next day you're writing a story on a bomb in, not the next day, the next minute you're writing a story on a bomb in Iraq. So you also have to 24-hour news network, news cycle, you know, sometimes you work overnight. So you really have to be adaptable and creative. Earlier I was saying that you have to be able to know how to use sound, use video, use natural sound, and use the edit suite in order to create these compelling stories that are fact-based, that are verifiable, and that are compelling so your audience actually cares. Right? And you have to be able to listen. You cannot be a good journalist if you are not a good listener. And grit. You have to be able to fight. You have to be able to fight for your stories. You have to be able to fight for the truth. You have to be able to withstand a lot of critique, internally from your newsrooms, externally from the people who are reading or writing, who are reading or consuming your work, you know. But if you can tick off 5 of these things, you, my dear, are well on your way to becoming a good journalist. You have the hallmarks of greatness, and that's all you need to start. Journalism is a craft. It's not just a profession. The older you get, the more you practice, the better you get. It's an art form, and there's nothing that you can't learn. Like, I had to spot for 3 days to figure out this new technology, try to make it as interactive as possible, try to figure out how video works, and I got it as right as I could, but it's challenging, but the rewards are definitely worth it. So with that in mind, hold on a second, I'm trying to move to my next slide. Oh, I don't have a next slide. Boo-hoo. Okay, so then I guess I'll say thank you for your time, and thank you for expressing an interest in journalism, whether you pursue journalism as a career or an interest or not. I think it's really important for all people to record their stories and record their histories. Now, we do that using TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, which are really good. And anything that you write in 100, 200, 300 years from now will be used as secondary sources. And I think that for women and for girls, our voices have often been excluded through history. So I think it's really important for us, whether you're journalists or not, to write as much as we can, so there are records of our thoughts and feelings left behind, so other people like us in the future can use them to shape real understandings of the past and who we were back then. So I bid you farewell, and thank you so much for allowing me to share my passion for journalism, and I hope you have a much clearer understanding of what journalism is at the end of this. So I wish you well, and I say good luck, and never, 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 never give up.